The morning sun cast long shadows across New Geneva Colony as Jake Morrison sipped his coffee in the administration building. He had been running this human settlement for 3 years now, and most days were quiet. Too quiet, some might say. The colony sat on the edge of known space, far from the busy trade routes and political troubles of the inner worlds. Jake liked it that way. After 20 years in the military, he had seen enough excitement to last several lifetimes. Here on New Geneva, his biggest problems were usually crop rotation schedules and equipment maintenance requests. It was a good life for a man who had grown tired of war. His peaceful morning ended when the emergency alarm started screaming. The sound made Jake's coffee cup rattle against his desk. Red lights flashed throughout the building as the colony's automated systems kicked into high alert mode. Jake was already reaching for his communication device when his deputy, Maria Santos, burst through his office door. "Jake, we've got a situation," she said, breathing hard. "Commander Rodriguez is calling from the orbital platform. Says it's urgent." Jake activated the main communication screen. Commander Luis Rodriguez appeared, his normally calm face showing clear signs of stress. Behind him, Jake could see the busy control room of the orbital defense platform that protected New Geneva from above. "Jake, we have an unidentified ship approaching the colony," Rodriguez said without greeting. "It came out of nowhere. Our sensors didn't pick it up until it was already past the outer warning buoys." Jake felt his stomach tighten. Unknown ships usually meant trouble. What kind of ship? "Is it hostile?" "That's the strange part," Rodriguez replied. "It's clearly alien design. Looks like Kalari construction, but it's broadcasting human emergency codes." Jake raised an eyebrow. The Kalari were an advanced alien race that humans had limited contact with. They kept to themselves mostly, considering other species beneath their notice. What would a Kalari ship want with a small human colony? "Are the codes current?" Jake asked. Rodriguez shook his head. "That's what makes this really weird. The codes are 7 years old, from the old mining survey format we used to use. 7 years ago, Jake had been fighting in the border wars. He knew nothing about old mining surveys or emergency codes, but something about this situation felt wrong. "Very wrong. What's their position now?" Jake asked. "They're requesting permission to land at the main spaceport." The pilot sounds desperate, Jake. "Whatever this is about, I think we need to take it seriously." Jake thought for a moment. New Geneva had basic defensive systems, but nothing that could stop a determined alien attack. If the Kalari wanted to hurt them, they probably could regardless of whether Jake gave permission or not. "Grant landing permission," he decided, "but keep all defensive systems ready and have security teams standing by at the spaceport." Rodriguez nodded. "Already done. The ship should touch down in about 10 minutes. Jake closed the communication and turned to Maria. "Get our best security team to the spaceport, and contact Dr. Helen Price. If we're dealing with aliens, we'll want our xenobiologist there." As Maria hurried out to make the arrangements, Jake grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. In his military days, he had learned that the best way to handle unknown situations was to face them directly. Whatever was happening, he would meet it head-on. The ride to the spaceport took only 5 minutes, but it felt much longer. Jake's mind raced with possibilities. What could a Kalari want with New Geneva? The colony had nothing of value except its location, and even that was only useful as a stepping stone to other worlds. When Jake arrived at the spaceport, he found a crowd already gathering. Word traveled fast in a small colony, and people were curious about their unexpected visitor. The security team was in position, but they looked nervous. Most of them had never seen an alien before. Dr. Price stood near the landing pad, checking her equipment. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. If anyone could handle first contact with an unknown alien, it was her. "Any idea what this is about, Helen?" Jake asked as he joined her. She shook her head. "The Kalari rarely interact with humans. When they do, it's usually through official diplomatic channels. This is unusual." A low humming sound filled the air, growing louder by the second. Jake looked up to see the alien ship descending through the morning sky. It was beautiful in a way that human ships never were. All smooth curves and flowing lines that seemed to bend light around them. The hull was a deep blue-black color that shifted like oil in the sunlight. The ship landed with barely a whisper, its advanced technology making the process look effortless. For a long moment, nothing happened. The gathered crowd held its breath, waiting. Then a section of the hull simply flowed aside, creating an opening where none had existed before. Jake tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward his sidearm. A figure appeared in the doorway of the ship. It was clearly alien, tall and slender, with blue-gray skin and silver markings that traced elegant patterns across its face and arms. The being wore a simple white garment that seemed to shift and flow like liquid, but Jake's attention was immediately drawn to what the alien was carrying. In its arms was a small child, no more than 5 years old. The child had human features mixed with alien ones, human hair and eyes, but with the same blue-gray skin tone as its carrier. The alien stepped onto the landing pad and looked around at the gathered humans. When it spoke, its voice was clear and musical, though Jake could hear the strain in it. "I am Zaraka of the Kalari," she said. "I have traveled across 3 star systems to reach this place. I am looking for someone, a human who saved my life many years ago." Jake stepped forward, his role as colony administrator giving him authority to speak for everyone. "I'm Jake Morrison, administrator of this colony. Who are you looking for?" Zaraka's large dark eyes fixed on Jake's face with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. The child in her arms stirred slightly, and Jake could see that it was sleeping. "I am looking for Ben Carter," she said simply. "Where is Ben Carter?" The name hit Jake like a physical blow. He felt the blood drain from his face as memories came flooding back. Ben Carter, the maintenance engineer who had died in that terrible accident 4 years ago. The quiet man who had kept the colony systems running smoothly until that horrible day when the fusion reactor had malfunctioned. Jake saw Dr. Price's face go pale as well. She remembered Ben, too. Everyone who had been here 4 years ago remembered Ben Carter. Jake started, then stopped. How do you tell someone who has traveled across star systems that the person they're looking for is dead? How do you explain that the human who apparently meant so much to this alien had been killed in a simple industrial accident? Zaraka seemed to sense his hesitation. Her grip on the child tightened, and her silver markings began to glow slightly, something Jake had never seen a Kalari do before. "You know this name," she said. "You know Ben Carter. Where is he? I must find him." Jake looked around at the crowd of colonists watching this strange scene unfold. In the distance, he could see more people hurrying toward the spaceport. Soon the entire colony would be here, waiting to see how their administrator handled this impossible situation. He took a deep breath and prepared to deliver news that would shatter this alien's world. 7 years earlier, on the remote planet Kepler 442c, Ben Carter was having the best day of his life. The morning sun was a beautiful orange color, different from Earth's yellow sun, and it made the strange crystal formations around their research camp sparkle like diamonds. Ben loved his job as a maintenance engineer. While the scientists on his team studied rocks and plants and atmosphere readings, Ben kept all their equipment working. He fixed the generators when they broke down, repaired the communication systems when solar storms damaged them, and made sure everyone had clean water and breathable air. It was important work, but Ben never thought of himself as important. He was just a guy who was good with tools and liked helping people. The research team was small, only 5 people total. Dr. Lisa Park was their xenobiologist, a smart woman who got excited about every new plant or microbe they found. Sam Rodriguez was their geologist, always digging in the dirt and taking samples of rocks. Amy Walsh handled communications with Earth and kept track of their schedules. And Commander Nick Foster was their leader, a serious man who followed every rule and regulation perfectly. Ben got along with everyone, but he was closest to Lisa. She was curious about everything and always asked Ben questions about how things worked. Ben enjoyed explaining the technical details of their equipment to someone who actually listened. On that particular morning, Ben was working on the main power generator when Amy's voice crackled over the communication system. "Everyone to the main building immediately," she said, and her voice sounded strange. "We have a situation." Ben wiped his hands on a rag and hurried to the main building. The others were already there, gathered around Amy's workstation. On her screen was a radar display showing something that shouldn't be there. "What is it?" Ben asked. Amy pointed at a blinking dot on the screen. "Crashed ship about 2 kilometers north of here. It came down hard about an hour ago." Commander Foster frowned. "Why didn't our sensors pick it up earlier?" "The ship has some kind of stealth technology," Amy explained. "Our equipment only detected it after it crashed and the stealth systems failed." Lisa leaned forward, studying the display. "Any signs of life?" Amy shook her head. I'm not getting any response to our communication attempts, but the ship's power systems are still partially active. Foster was already reaching for his equipment belt. We need to investigate. This could be first contact with an unknown alien species. Amy, contact Earth and let them know what's happening. Everyone else, gear up for a recon mission. Ben grabbed his toolkit without being asked. Whatever they found out there, someone would probably need to fix something. The walk to the crash site took 40 minutes across rocky terrain. When they finally saw the ship, Ben felt his breath catch in his throat. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Sleek and organic looking, as if it had been grown rather than built. The hull was a dark blue color that seemed to shift in the orange sunlight. The ship had hit the ground hard. One side was buried in the rocky soil, and Ben could see cracks running along the hull where the impact had damaged it. Kalari design, Foster said quietly. I've seen pictures in the databases. This is definitely a Kalari scout ship. Ben had heard of the Kalari but had never seen one. They were supposed to be an advanced alien race that kept mostly to themselves. The few reports Ben had read described them as proud and aloof, considering other species inferior. Lisa was already taking readings with her scanner. I'm detecting one life sign inside. Weak but alive, Foster hesitated. Ben could see the conflict on his face. As a military officer, Foster was trained to follow protocols. First contact with an alien species was supposed to go through proper diplomatic channels, not happen by accident on a remote research station. But Ben wasn't thinking about protocols. Someone was hurt and needed help. We have to do something, Ben said. If that was one of us in there, we'd want someone to help. Foster nodded slowly. You're right. Lisa, can you find a way inside? It took Lisa several minutes to locate what might be an entrance. The ship's technology was so advanced that even finding the door was difficult. When she finally found the right spot, a section of the hull simply dissolved, revealing the interior. Ben followed the others inside, his toolkit ready. The ship's interior was as beautiful as its exterior, all flowing curves and soft lighting. But something was clearly wrong. The air smelled strange and warning lights were flashing throughout the ship. They found the pilot in what Ben guessed was the control room. She was unconscious, slumped over a control panel that was sparking and smoking. Ben's first thought was that she was beautiful, in an alien way. Her skin was blue-gray and silver markings traced elegant patterns across her face and arms. Lisa immediately began scanning the alien with her medical equipment. She's alive, but barely. Multiple injuries, and I think she has some kind of internal bleeding. Sam was studying the damaged control panels. The life support system is failing. Those impact damages really messed things up. Foster was still frozen by uncertainty. We don't know anything about their biology. We could make things worse if we try to help. But Ben was already moving. He had noticed something that the others had missed. The life support system wasn't just damaged, it was failing in a very specific way. The main power coupling had been jarred loose in the crash, and the backup systems were slowly draining the ship's power reserves. I can fix this, Ben said, opening his toolkit. Foster grabbed his arm. Ben, wait! We don't know how their technology works. You could cause more damage. Ben looked at the unconscious alien pilot, then at the failing displays around the control room. In his experience, basic engineering principles were universal. Power was power, whether it came from human fusion reactors or alien technology. The power coupling is loose, Ben explained. I can see the connection points. If I don't fix it soon, her life support will fail completely. Without waiting for permission, Ben crawled under the control panel and began working. The alien technology was incredibly advanced, but the basic problem was simple enough. Using tools and spare parts from his kit, Ben managed to jerry-rig a temporary connection that restored power to the life support systems. It wasn't pretty, and it probably wasn't how the Kalari would have fixed it, but it worked. Fresh air began flowing through the ship, and the warning lights stopped flashing. Lisa's scanner beeped. Her vital signs are stabilizing. Ben, I think you saved her life. Ben emerged from under the control panel, his clothes dirty and his hands cut from working with unfamiliar materials. The repair won't last long. Maybe 12 hours if we're lucky. Someone needs to call for help. Amy was already working on that, trying to figure out how to contact Kalari ships. But Ben could see the problem. Even if they managed to send a distress signal, help might not arrive in time. Foster was looking at the alien pilot with a strange expression. "You know what this means, don't you? If she dies, the Kalari might blame us. If she lives, they might be grateful. Either way, our lives just got a lot more complicated." Ben didn't care about complications. He only cared about the fact that someone was hurt and needed help. For the next 18 hours, he worked almost non-stop to keep the alien ship systems running. Every time something failed, Ben found a way to fix it or work around it. He didn't sleep. He barely ate. When the others tried to convince him to rest, Ben refused. The alien pilot's life depended on those systems staying online until help arrived. During the long night, as Ben worked by the light of his portable lamps, the alien pilot regained consciousness for brief moments. She never spoke, but Ben could see her watching him work. Her large, dark eyes followed his movements as he crawled around her ship, fixing one system after another. Near dawn, the ship's communication system detected incoming Kalari vessels. Help was finally coming, but just as the rescue ships appeared on the horizon, the alien pilot's life support system failed again. Ben didn't hesitate. He removed his own emergency oxygen mask and placed it over the alien's face, giving her his air while he held his breath and made one final repair to her ship's systems. By the time the Kalari rescue team arrived, Ben was unconscious from oxygen deprivation. The last thing he remembered was the alien pilot's eyes, wide with what he thought might be gratitude, watching him as everything went black. When Ben woke up, he was in the research station's medical bay. Lisa was checking his vital signs, and she smiled when she saw his eyes open. "How is she?" Ben asked. His throat was raw from the oxygen deprivation. "Alive," Lisa said simply. "Thanks to you. The Kalari rescue team said you saved her life. They're calling you a hero." Ben shook his head. "I just did what anyone would do." But even as he said it, Ben knew it wasn't true. Foster had been paralyzed by protocol. Sam and Amy had been focused on the technical challenges. Only Lisa had really understood the urgency of the situation, and she didn't have the engineering skills to fix the ship's systems. Ben had acted when others hesitated. He had risked his own life to save a complete stranger from another species, and somehow that simple act of kindness was about to change everything. Zaraka woke up in pain. Her entire body ached, and for a moment she couldn't remember where she was. Then the memories came flooding back. The crash, the failing life support, and the strange human who had saved her life. She was lying in a bed in what appeared to be a human medical facility. The room was small and functional, nothing like the elegant healing chambers of her homeworld. But it was clean and quiet, and she could feel that her injuries were being properly treated. A human female entered the room, carrying a device that Zaraka didn't recognize. The woman had short brown hair and kind eyes, and she moved with the confidence of someone skilled in medical arts. "You're awake," the woman said with obvious relief. "I'm Dr. Lisa Park. How are you feeling?" Zaraka tried to sit up, but pain shot through her ribs. "Where am I?" "You're at our research station on Kepler 442c, Lisa explained gently. "Your ship crashed 3 days ago. We've been taking care of you." 3 days. Zaraka remembered the crash, but everything after that was unclear. She had vague memories of being inside her damaged ship, of watching a human male work frantically to keep her alive. "The human who fixed my ship," Zaraka said. "Where is he?" Lisa smiled. "Ben, he's been here almost constantly checking on you. I had to order him to get some sleep." Zaraka felt confused. In Kalari society, such devotion was only shown to family members or those of higher rank. Why would a human, clearly of inferior status, spend so much time caring for her? As if summoned by their conversation, the door opened, and the human male entered. He was tall but not imposing, with brown hair and gentle eyes. His clothes were simple work garments, and Zaraka could see old stains on his hands from working with machinery. "You're awake," he said, and his voice carried genuine happiness. "I'm Ben Carter. How are you feeling?" "I am adequate," Zaraka replied carefully. She had been taught to be cautious around inferior species. They often had hidden motives for their actions. Ben seemed to sense her discomfort. "I brought you something," he said, holding up a small device. "It's a translation unit. It should help us communicate better." He placed the device on the table beside her bed and stepped back, giving her space. Zaraka found this behavior puzzling. In her experience, beings who helped others usually expected immediate gratitude or reward, but this human seemed to want nothing. Over the following days, Zaraka began to understand the strange situation she found herself in. The research team was small and isolated, far from any major human settlement. They had no way to immediately contact Kalari authorities, so they were caring for her as best they could while waiting for rescue ships to arrive. Ben visited her several times each day, always bringing something: food, books, small devices to help her pass the time. He never stayed long unless she wanted to talk, and he never asked for anything in return. At first, Zaraka assumed this was typical behavior for his species. Perhaps humans were naturally servile, eager to please their superiors. But as she observed the interactions between Ben and his teammates, she realized this wasn't true. Ben treated her no differently than he treated the other humans, with respect, kindness, and genuine concern for her well-being. This puzzled her greatly. According to everything she had been taught, inferior species should be fearful or resentful when forced to care for their betters. They shouldn't show genuine kindness without expectation of reward. On her 5th day at the station, Zaraka asked Ben directly about his motivations. "Why do you help me?" she said when he brought her the evening meal. "What do you want in return?" Ben looked genuinely confused by the question. "I don't want anything. You were hurt and needed help." "But I am Kalari," Zaraka pointed out. "Your species and mine are not allies." Ben sat down in the chair beside her bed, something he only did when she seemed willing to have a longer conversation. "Does that matter? You're a person who was in trouble. That's all I need to know." Zaraka studied his face, looking for signs of deception, but his expression was completely open and honest. This human truly seemed to believe what he was saying. "Your leaders teach you to help other species?" she asked. Ben shook his head. "Nobody taught me this. It just seems like the right thing to do." That night, Zaraka lay awake thinking about Ben's words. The concept of doing something simply because it was right was not unknown to her people, but it was usually applied only within their own species. The idea that a being would extend such consideration to other species was revolutionary. As the days passed, Zaraka found herself looking forward to Ben's visits. He was an excellent storyteller, sharing tales of human history, culture, and exploration. He spoke of human dreams of traveling to the stars, of their hopes for peaceful contact with other intelligent species. Ben also asked questions about Kalari culture, but not in the way most beings did. He wasn't trying to gather intelligence or find weaknesses to exploit. He was genuinely curious about how her people lived, what they valued, what made them happy. Zaraka found herself sharing more than she had intended. She told Ben about the beauty of her homeworld, about Kalari art and music and philosophy. She even told him about her own dreams that had gotten her in trouble with the High Council. "I believe my people are making a mistake," she said one evening as they watched the orange sun set through her window. "We isolate ourselves from other species because we believe we are superior. But superiority means nothing if it leads to loneliness." Ben listened without judgment as she explained her belief that the Kalari should open themselves to learning from other species. She had been exiled for expressing these views, sent on the scouting mission that had led to her crash. "Maybe being different isn't about being better or worse," Ben said thoughtfully. "Maybe it's just about having different strengths. Your people are incredibly advanced technologically, but maybe humans have other kinds of strength." "What strengths do humans have?" Zaraka asked. Ben was quiet for a long moment. "I think we're good at caring about others, even when we don't have to." 2 weeks into her stay, Zaraka's peaceful recovery was interrupted by the arrival of a human trade ship. The captain and his crew were very different from Ben and his teammates. They were loud, crude, and clearly motivated only by profit. When the trade captain learned that the research team was caring for a Kalari, he reacted with scorn. "You're wasting your time. he told Commander Foster loudly enough for Zaraka to hear from her room. The Kalari think they're better than everyone else. Soon as she's healed up, she'll probably report you to their authorities for contaminating her with human contact. Zaraka felt her silver markings flush with anger, but she remained silent. Unfortunately, the trade captain wasn't finished. I've dealt with Kalari before, he continued. Arrogant bunch. Think their blue skin makes them special. Probably can't wait to get away from us inferior humans. Zaraka was preparing to emerge from her room and confront this rude human when she heard Ben's voice, sharp with anger. That's enough, Ben said. You don't know anything about her. The trade captain laughed. Defending your pet alien engineer? That's sweet. She's not a pet, Ben said, and Zaraka could hear the steel in his voice. She's an intelligent being who deserves respect, and she's shown more courage and dignity in the past 2 weeks than you've probably shown in your entire life. Courage? The captain scoffed. She crashed her ship and had to be rescued by humans, some superior species. She was on a scouting mission alone in unknown space, Ben replied. She was risking her life to explore and learn. When she crashed, she never complained about her pain or demanded special treatment. She's been grateful for every kindness we've shown her, and she's treated all of us with respect even though she has no reason to trust us. Ben's voice grew stronger as he continued. You want to know what courage looks like? It looks like someone who challenges their own people's prejudices because they believe in something better. It looks like someone who treats strangers with kindness even when their own society says those strangers are inferior. The trade captain mumbled something rude and walked away, but Zaraka barely noticed. She was too stunned by Ben's words. No one had ever defended her like that. Not even her own people. That night, Ben visited her room as usual, but neither of them mentioned the incident with the trade captain. Instead, they sat quietly and watched the alien stars through her window. Tomorrow the Kalari ships will arrive, Zaraka said finally. She had received word from her people that morning. Ben nodded. You must be excited to go home. Zaraka was quiet for a long time. I am not sure where home is anymore, she said finally. Ben looked at her with surprise. What do you mean? Before I came here, I thought I knew what it meant to be Kalari. I thought we were superior because of our technology, our long history, our advanced civilization. She paused, struggling to find the right words. But you have shown me a different kind of advancement. You have shown me that the highest evolution is not in machines or knowledge, but in the capacity to care for others. Ben shook his head. I haven't shown you anything special. I just did what felt right. That is exactly what makes it special, Zaraka said. On my world, we do what is logical, what is efficient, what advances our society. But you do what is right simply because it is right. You show kindness without calculating the benefit. You defend others. Jake Morrison stared at Zaraka, his mind racing. The weight of what he had to tell her felt crushing. How do you destroy someone's hope when they've traveled across the galaxy to find it? Please, Zaraka said, stepping closer. The child in her arms stirred slightly, and Jake could see the mix of human and alien features more clearly now. I know you recognize the name Ben Carter. Tell me where he is. Jake looked around at the crowd of colonists that had gathered. Some of them had known Ben personally. He could see the pain in their faces as they realized what Jake would have to tell this alien mother and her child. Dr. Helen Price moved to stand beside Jake. Her voice was gentle but firm. Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private. Zaraka's silver markings began to glow brighter. No, I have traveled too far and waited too long for privacy. If Ben Carter is here, I will see him now. If he is not... She paused, and Jake could see fear creeping into her expression. Then I need to know why. Jake took a deep breath. But before he could speak, Zaraka continued talking, her words coming faster now. Let me tell you what Ben Carter did, she said, her voice carrying across the spaceport. Let me tell you how one human changed the course of galactic history. She shifted the child in her arms and began to speak. Her voice was clear and strong, and Jake found himself drawn into her story despite his dread about what he would have to tell her. 7 years ago, I was a different person, Zaraka said. I was proud, arrogant, convinced that my people were superior to all others. I had been exiled from my homeworld for suggesting that we should learn from other species, but even then, I didn't truly believe it myself. She looked around at the gathered humans. When my ship crashed and Ben Carter saved my life, I thought it was simply the action of an inferior being trying to gain favor with a superior one. I was wrong about everything. Zaraka described her time at the research station, Ben's kindness, and the way he had defended her against the crude trade captain. As she spoke, Jake could see the colonists becoming more and more invested in her story. Ben Carter showed me that true strength is not in technology or military power, Zaraka continued. True strength is in the courage to care for others even when they are different from you. Even when they have given you no reason to care. The child in her arms woke up and looked around with curious eyes that were unmistakably human in shape but with an alien depth of color. When I returned to my homeworld, Zaraka said, I carried Ben's lesson with me. I spoke to anyone who would listen about what I had learned. Most of my people dismissed my words as the ravings of someone who had been contaminated by contact with inferior species. Jake saw some of the colonists exchange glances. They were beginning to understand that this story was bigger than just one alien looking for one human. But some listened, Zaraka continued. And slowly, very slowly, minds began to change. It took 3 years of speaking, debating, arguing, and demonstrating. 3 years of being called a traitor and a fool. But eventually enough of my people began to see the truth that Ben Carter had shown me. Her silver markings were glowing steadily now, and Jake realized this was a sign of deep emotion in her species. We call it the Great Reform, she said. In 1 generation, my people went from isolation to cooperation. We opened our borders to other species. We began sharing our technology and learning from others. We became part of the galactic community instead of standing apart from it. Dr. Price stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming the awkwardness of the situation. You're saying that contact with Ben caused your entire civilization to change its fundamental policies? Zaraka nodded. The Kalari Council of Ministers voted unanimously to end our isolation. I was appointed as the first Kalari ambassador to the Galactic Council, and Ben Carter's example has prevented 3 wars between our people and neighboring species. Jake felt his legs go weak. He had known Ben Carter as a quiet maintenance engineer who kept their systems running. He had never imagined that Ben's simple act of kindness could have such far-reaching consequences. But the changes go deeper than politics, Zaraka continued. Ben Carter changed how we think about what it means to be advanced. We used to measure advancement by technology, by power, by the ability to dominate others. Now we measure it by the capacity for compassion, for understanding, for building bridges between different peoples. She looked down at the child in her arms, and her expression softened. And that brings me to why I am here and why I have brought my daughter. Jake's mind reeled. Daughter? But the child was clearly part human. In our medical databases, we had genetic material that Ben Carter left behind when he worked on my ship, Zaraka explained. Skin cells from his tools, hair follicles, traces of blood. Our scientists can create life from such small samples, the crowd gasped. Jake felt his world tilting. You mean? I created a child using Ben Carter's genetic material and my own, Zaraka said simply. I wanted her to be a living symbol of what cooperation between species could achieve. I named her Kara Ben. The little girl looked up at the mention of her name and smiled. Jake could see Ben's gentle expression in her face, mixed with her mother's elegant alien features. But more than that, Zaraka continued. I wanted Ben Carter to know what his kindness had accomplished. I wanted him to see how his simple act of compassion had changed the galaxy. I wanted him to meet his daughter and know that his legacy would continue. Jake's heart was breaking. The hope in Zaraka's voice, the trust in her eyes, the way she held the child as if presenting a gift. It made what he had to tell her even more devastating. Zaraka, Jake began, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm afraid I have terrible news. Her silver markings dimmed slightly. What news? Jake forced himself to meet her eyes. Ben Carter. Ben Carter died 4 years ago. There was an accident at the colony. A fusion reactor malfunction. He was trying to repair it when Jake's voice broke. I'm so sorry. He's gone. The silence that followed was deafening. Jake watched as the light seemed to go out of Zaraka's eyes. Her grip on her daughter tightened, and the child seemed to sense her mother's distress. No, Zaraka said finally. No, that cannot be true. I would have known. I would have felt it somehow. I'm sorry, Jake repeated. I knew Ben. He was a good man, exactly the kind of person you've described. But he's been dead for 4 years. Zaraka staggered slightly, and Dr. Price moved to steady her. The crowd of colonists watched in uncomfortable silence as this alien mother processed the destruction of her hopes. Then it was all for nothing, Zaraka whispered. The reforms, the changes, the peace we've built. He will never know. It wasn't for nothing, Jake said firmly. What you've told us shows that Ben's life had more meaning than any of us ever imagined. He may be gone, but his impact lives on. But Jake could see that his words weren't reaching her. Zaraka looked lost, broken, holding her daughter who would never meet her father. The crowd began to murmur sympathetically. Some of the colonists who had known Ben were wiping away tears. The whole scene was heartbreaking. Jake was trying to think of something else to say when a voice from the back of the crowd called out, "Zara? Zaraka, is that really you?" Everyone turned toward the voice. The crowd parted, and Jake felt his jaw drop open. Walking toward them was a man in simple work clothes, his hair a bit grayer than Jake remembered, his face showing the lines of someone who had been through difficult times, but it was unmistakably, impossibly Ben Carter. Zaraka made a sound that was part gasp, part sob. Her silver markings blazed with light as she stared at the impossible sight of the human she had traveled across the galaxy to find. "Ben?" she whispered. "But they told me you were dead." Ben looked as stunned as everyone else. His eyes went from Zaraka to the child in her arms, and Jake could see the moment when understanding dawned on his face. "I was hurt," Ben said, moving closer. "Badly hurt. I lost my memory for a long time. I've been living here under a different name, working as a mechanic." He paused, his voice full of wonder. "I only started remembering everything a few weeks ago." Zaraka took a shaky step toward him. "Is it really you?" Ben smiled, and Jake could see the same gentle expression that had apparently changed the course of galactic history. "It's really me. And Zaraka, is that our daughter?" The little girl looked between her parents with curious eyes, not understanding the magnitude of the moment but sensing its importance. "Her name is Kara Ben," Zaraka said, tears streaming down her face. "I have so much to tell you. So much has changed because of what you taught me." Ben reached out and touched the child's face gently. Kara Ben giggled and reached for him with small hands. "I think," Ben said softly, "we have a lot of catching up to do." As Jake watched the impossible reunion unfold, he realized that sometimes the universe found ways to make happy endings possible, even when they seemed completely out of reach. For a long moment, nobody moved. The crowd of colonists watched in amazed silence as Ben Carter and Zaraka stared at each other across the space that separated them. 4 years of believing someone was dead, 7 years of separation, and the miracle of a reunion that nobody had thought possible. Then Kara Ben broke the spell. The little girl reached out toward Ben with both arms, making the soft cooing sound that all children make when they want to be held. Ben stepped forward and carefully took his daughter from Zaraka's arms. The moment was so tender that Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion. Here was a man meeting his child for the first time, and the child was a living symbol of cooperation between two entirely different species. "Hello, little one," Ben said softly. Kara Ben touched his face with her small hands, studying his features with the intense curiosity of a young child. Her eyes were the same gentle brown as Ben's, but her skin had the blue-gray tint of her mother's people. "She has your eyes," Zaraka said, her voice thick with emotion, "and your kindness. Even as a baby, she was always trying to help others." Ben looked up at Zaraka, and Jake could see years of pain and confusion in his expression. "I remember the crash now. I remember fixing your ship and staying with you until help arrived. But after that," he shook his head, "everything was blank until a few weeks ago." Dr. Price stepped forward, her medical training taking over. "What happened to you, Ben?" "The records show you died in a reactor accident." Ben shifted Kara Ben to one arm and ran his hand through his hair. "There was an accident, but it wasn't at the reactor. I was working on a damaged shuttle when the fuel cells exploded. The blast threw me against a wall and gave me severe head trauma." He looked around at the gathered colonists, many of whom he had worked with for years without them knowing his true identity. "When I woke up in the medical center, I couldn't remember anything. Not my name, not my past, nothing. The doctor said I might never get my memories back." Ben's voice grew quieter.
"They gave me a new identity, Bill Carson."
"I've been living under that name for 4 years, working as a mechanic and trying to build a new life. Jake felt a mixture of relief and guilt. Relief that Ben was alive, but guilt that they had all believed he was dead and never searched for him. The memories started coming back slowly. Ben continued. First just flashes. Images of alien technology. The smell of ozone from damaged electronics. Then bigger pieces. A few weeks ago I remembered everything. The research station, the crash, and... He looked at Zaraka with wonder. You? Zaraka moved closer, her silver markings glowing with joy. I never stopped believing you were alive somewhere. In my heart I knew that someone who could give so much of himself to help others could not simply be gone. You said things have changed because of what I taught you, Ben said. What did you mean? Over the next hour, with the entire colony listening, Zaraka told Ben about the Great Reform. She described how his example had inspired her to challenge her people's isolationist policies. How she had spent years convincing the Kalari Council to open their society to other species. Ben listened with growing amazement as she explained how the Kalari had become a bridge between different civilizations, how their technology and wisdom were now shared freely with dozens of other species. 3 separate wars were prevented because of the new cooperation protocols, Zaraka said. The Rigel conflict, the Centauri trade war, and the border disputes with the Andromedans. Each time, Kalari negotiators were able to find peaceful solutions because we had learned to see other species as equals, rather than inferiors. Ben shook his head in disbelief. I just fixed your ship. I didn't do anything special. That is exactly what made it special, Zaraka replied. You helped someone who was different from you, who belonged to a species that had never shown friendship to humans. You asked for nothing in return. You risked your own life to save mine, not because you had to, but because it was the right thing to do. She reached into her clothing and pulled out a small, crystalline object that seemed to capture and reflect light in impossible ways. This is the Star of Unity, the highest honor my people can bestow. You are the first non-Kalari ever to receive it. Ben stared at the beautiful object, but he didn't take it. I can't accept this. I was just doing what anyone would do. But that is not true, Zaraka said gently. Your own teammate, Commander Foster, was paralyzed by protocol. Others in your group were focused on technical problems. Only you saw past the barriers of species and politics to the simple fact that someone needed help. Jake found himself nodding. He had seen this quality in Ben during the short time they had worked together. Ben had been the kind of person who stayed late to fix equipment that wasn't his responsibility, who helped new colonists settle in even when he had his own work to do. The galaxy is a better place because of your kindness, Zaraka continued, and now I want to offer you something. My people have authorized me to invite you to serve as humanity's first ambassador to our homeworld. The crowd gasped. Jake felt his mind reeling. The implications were staggering. Official diplomatic relations between humans and one of the most advanced species in the galaxy. Ben looked down at Kara-Ben, who had fallen asleep in his arms. What about her? What about our daughter? She comes with us, of course, Zaraka said. She is part of both our peoples. Who better to represent the future we are building together? Ben was quiet for a long time, thinking. Jake could see the weight of the decision in his expression. To accept would mean leaving the simple life he had built on New Geneva, taking on responsibilities he had never imagined. The Ben Carter I remember would want to help, Zaraka said softly. He would want to build bridges between our peoples. Ben looked up at her and smiled. You're right. I've spent 4 years without memories, without purpose. Maybe it's time to remember who I really am. He turned to Jake. I guess this means I'll be resigning from my position as mechanic. Jake laughed, though his eyes were wet with tears. I think we can manage without you, Ben. Besides, I have a feeling your new job is going to be a little more important. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Ben had to gather his few possessions, say goodbye to friends who were still stunned by the revelation of his true identity, and prepare for a journey that would take him farther from Earth than any human had ever traveled. As the sun began to set over New Geneva Colony, Ben stood with Zaraka beside her ship, holding Kara-Ben and watching the orange light fade from the sky. Are you nervous? Zaraka asked. Ben considered the question. A little. I've never been an ambassador before. I don't know anything about diplomacy or politics. You know about kindness, Zaraka said. You know about seeing past differences to find common ground. Those are the most important diplomatic skills of all. As they prepared to board the ship, Cara Ben woke up and looked around with curious eyes. Ben bounced her gently and she giggled. "What do human fathers teach their children?" Zaraka asked. Ben thought for a moment, then began to sing softly. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky." Cara Ben listened with fascination, her large eyes fixed on Ben's face. When he finished, she clapped her hands and made happy sounds. "She likes human music," Zaraka observed with amusement. "I'll teach her all the songs I can remember," Ben promised, "and stories and games and everything else human children learn." As their ship prepared for departure, Jake and the other colonists gathered to see them off. Ben paused at the entrance to the alien vessel and looked back at the life he was leaving behind. "Thank you," he called to the crowd, "for everything. For taking care of me when I couldn't remember who I was. For being my friends." Jake stepped forward. "Thank you, Ben, for showing us what humans can be at their best." The ship's entrance sealed behind them, and Jake watched as the elegant vessel rose into the evening sky. Within minutes, it was just another point of light among the stars. Dr. Price joined Jake as they watched the ship disappear. "Do you think he knows what he's gotten himself into?" Jake smiled. "I think Ben Carter has always known exactly what he's getting himself into. He just chooses to do the right thing anyway." As the stars came out over New Geneva Colony, Jake thought about the incredible story he had witnessed. A simple maintenance engineer had saved an alien's life, inspired the transformation of an entire civilization, and become the father of a child who represented hope for the future of multiple species. It was the kind of story that made Jake proud to be human. Not because humans were superior to other species, but because at their best, humans had the capacity to care for others even when it cost them something. They could see past differences of appearance, culture, and biology to the fundamental truth that all intelligent beings deserved compassion and respect. Somewhere among the stars, Ben Carter was beginning a new chapter of his life, teaching his daughter human songs while traveling to a world where his simple act of kindness had already changed everything. And Jake knew that this was just the beginning. The seeds of compassion that Ben had planted would continue to grow, spreading throughout the galaxy as more species learned what humans could teach them about the true meaning of strength. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but perhaps the greatest wonder of all was